Manx Radio's Update with Dave Moore.
The time is 5 o'clock. You're listening to Manx Radio. I am Dave Moore, and this is Update. Welcome to the programme. Half an hour of the latest news in the Isle of Man, plus Manx sport, business, travel updates, along with the newsmakers in person. Coming up, the doctor's strike is due to get underway next week. We'll have more on that. There are changes afoot to the minimum wage in the Isle of Man. We'll be hearing about that as well. Plus, Good Morning Ireland Games. Lorraine Kelly has been named as one of the hosts at this year's event in Orkney. That's all coming up in the next half hour. First of all, the news headlines with Siobhan Fletcher. Faster Mai.
Manx Care says most non-urgent services will be paused whilst doctors on the island go on strike. Next week, on Wednesday and Thursday, they'll take industrial action as part of an ongoing dispute over pay. The health body says it wants to reassure the community that operational planning is underway to minimise the impact on patients and service users. The British Medical Association says the action comes because the health body has failed to produce a credible pay offer. But Dr Sean Creran says there's still time for a deal to be made.
We don't want to take industrial action. We feel that if we do get a credible offer in the immediate future, that this whole action can be delayed.
Police are appealing for witnesses following a fight between four men outside Jack's on Granville Street in Douglas. It happened at approximately 3 a.m. on Sunday the 12th of January. During the incident, two of the men received facial injuries requiring hospital treatment. A UK Marine Accident Investigation Branch report into a fatal accident aboard a Manx registered super yacht has been sent to interested parties for consultation. The investigation was launched by the MAIB on behalf of the Isle of Man Ship Registry. Athlete Sarah Aston has set a new Manx record in the women's 10-kilometre road race. She posted a time of 32 minutes and 20 seconds in Valencia on Saturday. Further afield, it's being widely reported Israel and Hamas have reached an agreement to end the 15-month war in Gaza. The deal will also see Israeli hostages freed in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. For months, on and off talks have been brokered by Egyptian and Qatari mediators with the backing of the United States. More details are expected to be set out soon. Singer Linda Nolan has been described as a pop icon and a beacon of hope following her death aged 65. She'd been battling cancer for years and was admitted to hospital with pneumonia at the weekend. And Jacob Fernley says he had to put up with a few drunken comments before reaching the third round of the Australian Open tennis. They're your headlines. I'll be back with your news at 6.
Thanks, Siobhan. And looking now at the weather, dry with variable amounts of cloud, moderate southwest wind. Minimum temperature of 7 Celsius. Dry again tomorrow. Areas of cloud and also bright or sunny intervals. This more likely in the north. Moderate to fresh southerly wind. A top temperature of 10 degrees Celsius. Largely cloudy on Friday. Outbreaks of drizzle at times, especially over the hills. Moderate to fresh south-southwest wind and a highest temperature of 9 Celsius.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Cannell's Agricultural Supplies have been serving the good folk of the north for over 30 years, supplying homegrown wheats, whole and rolled oats, working clothing, fencing, animal feeds, parts, tools and emergency supplies. Call Julia on 880206 or find Cannell's on Facebook.
Patricia Wild Opticians is celebrating over 30 years of friendly, caring service in Farm Hill and Ramsey. Visit us for professional eye care with stress-free parking. Phone Patricia Wild Opticians on 813 977.
For over 25 years, Langness Maintenance Services have been the block paving specialists, including property maintenance, fencing and landscaping. Fast, reliable and competitive. For a free no-obligation quote, call Paddy on 49667. Langness Maintenance Services, 49667.
A ground source heat pump can save thousands of pounds a year, and you can harness this energy on island with Geothermal Limited, the water borehole experts. Visit drilling.im and see how a ground source heat pump borehole works. That's drilling.im.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
In 2021, Tynwald made a commitment to align the Isle of Man's minimum wage with the living wage within 5 years. Despite concerns around the impact further rate uplifts would have on businesses, Today we've heard how government plans to achieve that. Lewis Foster joins me in the studio now. So Lewis, what's going to happen?
Well, it's not for definite yet. This is all subject to Tynwald approval next month, but what's been put forward is a two-part increase. In case anyone's unfamiliar, minimum wage currently stands at £11.45 an hour, and the living wage, which is what government describes as the minimum level of pay necessary to allow people the basic opportunities and choices necessary for them to participate in society, is at £13.05 an hour. So there's a bit of a gap at the moment. It's a difference of £56 a week. That's if you work a typical 35 hours.
You mentioned a two-part increase. When would that happen?
So the first proposed uplift would be from the 1st of April. That would be an increase in the minimum wage from £11.45 to £12.25. Then in October, a second increase would be enforced, taking it up further to that living wage rate of £13.05. Now, the Department for Enterprise says the phasing in of the proposed increases in this way seeks to strike a balance between ensuring the island remains an attractive place to live and work, prioritising fair wages whilst recognising the impact on some businesses in the economy. You may remember the Minimum Wage Committee raised some concerns towards the end of last year regarding the impact that a single increase in April would have on businesses. There was even a consultation held about that.
Is it surprising that this has been announced?
Well, it depends how you look at it, I suppose. On the one hand, government is fulfilling that commitment made back in 2021, but also these are exceptional times. The Treasury Minister, Dr. Alex Allinson, is quoted today as saying, when Tynwald first resolved to deliver parity between the minimum and living wage rates, clearly no one was aware of the significant challenges businesses would face. It's those businesses that I think many will be looking to for reaction this week. And something that might soften the blow for them is this commitment by the DfE and Treasury today to carry out a review of the current process for determining proposals in respect of the minimum wage. Consider the current statutory requirements prescribed in the Minimum Wage Act, the policy position of alignment with the living wage, as well as exploring other options for future consideration. It's also been suggested there'll be a new approach to calculating the living wage here. But whatever happens further down the line, it will be interesting, of course, to see first how Tynwald votes on these proposals next month.
Thank you, Lewis. And that proposed minimum wage increases, that Tynwald sitting, will get underway on February the 18th. You're listening to Manx Radio. This is Update. And doctors in the Isle of Man will go on strike for the first time in history later this month. The British Medical Association's confirmed staff will walk out at 7 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, January the 22nd, until 7 o'clock the following morning, Thursday, January the 23rd. The BMA says this decision comes as Manx Care failed to make an acceptable offer that gives doctors fairer pay. Dr. Sean Crerand and Dr. Prakash Tyagarajan spoke to Manx Radio.
What we are fighting for is what the BMA calls pay restoration. And if you look at how various professional groups have fared, the doctors, hospital doctors in particular, and even amongst the hospital doctors, consultants and resident doctors or junior doctors have been the worst affected. Following year after year after year of below inflation pay raises, we are now 20% behind what we were back in 2008. And if you look at the general population from the Office of National Statistics, all other workers, public and private sector, if you put them together, are 1.2% up on what they were earning back in 2008, whereas we are 20% below.
I think people are already frustrated at the delivery of service, the cancellation without any industrial action whatsoever. Elective surgery has been cancelled, has been postponed, clinics have been cancelled and postponed. So we don't want to take it, our industrial action, and we feel that if we do get a credible offer in the immediate future, and people are working, our own representatives are working this evening as we talk, tomorrow morning as we talk, to present Manx Care with solutions to the problem with a credible offer, that this whole action can be delayed. And certainly we it's not. We are our patients' advocates. We want to provide a good service to them. And I think in the longer term, having a stable workforce, being able to attract people, being able to fill the vacancies that are causing some of these delays will, in the longer term, actually be helpful to patients and helpful to deliver a service.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The TV presenter Lorraine Kelly has been announced as a co-host for the opening ceremony of this year's Island Games in Orkney. In a short update, Kelly, who's also an ambassador for the event, says she's excited to be part of the occasion.
Hi there, it's Lorraine here. Now, as you might have heard by now, Orkney is set to host the 2025 International Island Games, and there's going to be over 2,000 competitors and officials from, 24 island groups across the world, all coming together to compete. It's going to be lovely. I'm very excited as I will be part of the opening ceremony of the Games. I'm really looking forward to that. And it's going to kick off a week of top sporting action from the 12th to the 18th of July. It's a really, really good opportunity to showcase Orkney as the perfect place to host this event and, of course, welcoming friends from all across the globe. It really is going to be so special. I am looking forward to being here again, of course, to soak up all of the atmosphere and enjoy the Games. It's going to be fantastic.
Lorraine Kelly. Staying with a sporting theme, it's been announced the Isle of Man women's national cricket team will take part in the ICC World Cup qualifiers for the first time this summer. The island's cricket development officer, Greg Wright, says it's a major milestone for the squad and hopes it can have a lasting legacy for the sport in future.
It's huge. It's a one-off sort of thing because to be able to participate in World Cup qualifiers, you have to have 8 hardball teams playing regular cricket. So this is a one-off thing until we can actually manage to domestically get that in place as a legacy and a driver to get more women playing and then to develop cricket on the island and get more people actually involved. It's huge. So we want to try and make the most out of it so people get inspired to join in really and then play.
The women's team only came into existence really over the last couple of years. What's been the key to this steep rise?
I think it goes down to personal performances by players, commitment from the girls, a pretty sporty culture on the island, and then just application and a bit of hard work from those who have been involved and taken the opportunities and done well.
What do you think this could do for the profile of cricket on the Isle of Man to encourage even more women and girls to get involved in the sport locally?
Hopefully it'll enthuse a lot more to do it. We've been 3 series we've had televised and they've all been very well viewed, but we're hoping that something of this magnitude being a World Cup qualifier, it'll be far more accessible. We're going to go out of our way to make sure that it's more openly accessible for people to see it. It'll be on ICC TV, so we're hoping that people will watch it and want to get involved in it. Time and links in quite well with cricket starting on the island in secondary schools and such like as well. We've looked at some different varying competitions on the island for hardball in relation to the Super Series that we did last year, and we're looking to try and complement that with the Silver Series, so more people have got the opportunity to play at a level that's more relevant to them as well, whether they're starting or whether they're developing in experience as well. So lots of initiatives.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
No concerns at air or sea to report. The Manxman should be in at 5:25 into Douglas. Down at the airport, the flight from Liverpool, London City, Manchester and Edinburgh all showing on time. And in terms of departures, the flights to Liverpool and Edinburgh also showing on time. Now, a short time ago, Bray Hill was closed to traffic in Douglas. We've not been told of any change to that, so assuming that Bray Hill is still closed at the moment.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside. A retired midwife has started free antenatal classes for parents-to-be in the Isle of Man to fill the void left by the absence of sessions previously run by government. Jan Uliat launched the 3-week courses after Manx Care stopped its face-to-face sessions last year. As part of her sessions. She signposts new parents to other services, including paediatric first aid. Those courses are run by Louise Thomas. They've both been speaking to Amy Griffiths.
At the moment, I just want the women to have the choice that they can have a face-to-face class if they want to. If you can take the fear out of childbirth, then hopefully they'll all have a good experience. But I think it's quite good for them to understand what their bodies are doing, because a lot of women get absolutely terrified by the thought of the contraction. So I spend quite a lot of time in going over what an actual contraction is, and hopefully that will take the fear out of it for them.
And what's the response been like since you announced that you were going to be starting these courses?
Yeah, it's been quite overwhelming actually, and we were absolutely inundated for the first 3 weeks.
And then, Louise, if I come to you, because you're also doing free classes, but for child first aid, so can you tell me about your course?
Even though it is a paediatric first aid course, a lot of it you could deal with adults as well, so it's just a good knowledge to have, really.
And what made you want to start doing the courses?
Well, I've got 4 grown-up daughters and I've got 4 grandchildren, and it's since looking after my grandchildren that I realised that there's nothing out there like this. So I was in a very fortunate position that I could go away, do all the appropriate training, come back and set it up on the island.
A lot of people, especially a parent, if it's your own child, the first instinct is terror, isn't it? And blind panic, thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So do you find that it brings some comfort to people, giving them the tools that they need in that situation?
Absolutely. And I found with 2 of my daughters who've got children, you can see the anxiety in them being new young mums. It's hard and it's just giving them the tools. But what I do is I send everyone the presentation, so they've actually got it there in black and white so they can go through it and read it afterwards. I think with all the cutbacks now, it would be great, ideal if it was offered. But I think it would be ideal, but...
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Proposals for the creation of a campsite for tents and motorhomes in the north of the island have been backed by planners. Beth Espy has the details.
According to BBC Isle of Man, the proposals would see a section of agricultural land on Summerhill Road in Derby used for 15 pitch tents, 10 motorhomes and 3 shepherd-style huts. Now, this site has been used by the Isle of Man Motor Caravan Club for the parking of vehicles since the 1990s and is otherwise used for livestock grazing. Planning Committee member Sam Skelton said while countryside should be protected, the quality of the agricultural land was poor and the plan supported the government's tourism objective. The plans also include a reception office along with toilet and shower facilities. A report by the planning officer who recommended the proposals were approved said the visual impact of the change would be mitigated by the planting of trees to act as a screen. Given the limited scale and intensity of the proposed development, the proposals were considered acceptable in terms of visual impact, according to the report. And this impact would be greatest from the end of March to the end of October, in particular during TT and Manx Grand Prix. Applicant Andrew Brew said the proposals would diversify his income streams and the facility would be in keeping with the surrounding area. But objectors argued the plans would affect the peaceful nature of Derby East. Planning Committee member Matthew Warren requested conditions were put in place to limit the period of time a caravan could remain at the site, while fellow committee member Adele asked for a restriction on loud music after 10 p.m.
Beth Espy reporting. You're listening to Manx Radio. This is Update. Now, Storm Dara gave the island a big battering in December, and the clean-up operation around the Isle of Man is still ongoing. The Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture says a year's worth of fallen trees happened in one day. John Moss has been listening to Arboricultural Officer Charles Harrison.
We try and use our central team as much as we can, but with the scale of the works and the quantity of it throughout the glens, we've engaged in contractors. Some of these contractors have specialist equipment, and that we've been trying to utilise that to make sure the trees have been dealt with safely.
Do you go for the more popular glens, if I can put it that way, first?
We've been trying to take a sort of a proactive approach to this. Some of the very popular glens, such as Colby and Mollyquirks, have got a large quantity of trees that have failed. We try and look at the wins we can get out quickly so we can open a greater proportion of the glens rather than focusing on one big glen, which would result in some of the smaller glens being closed for a longer period of time.
It's fairly obvious to people if a glen is closed, isn't it?
We've used Harris fencing, signage, and rope and tape where we can. Obviously, some of these glens have multiple entrances, so we've tried to utilise signage as much as we can.
Do we have an idea of how long it's going to take? Is this a long-term business? Could we be looking into the spring before some of the glens are cleared?
It's hard to say, really. Some of the big paths that might take a bit longer to open. They might require specialist cranes to get the trees out of rivers. With the amount of trees that have fallen across the island in public and private hands, contractor availability is low at the moment. So we haven't got an exact date where all the glens will be open.
But the word to the public is if a glen is taped off, it's taped off for a reason.
There is a real danger of fallen trees moving and hung up trees falling. The last thing we want as members of the public to go in there and be struck by a tree or crushed by a fallen tree. It is a real risk in some of these glens.
Charles Harrison talking to John Moss. And Douglas North MHK is attempting to resolve parking issues in the capital, and he says it's important to give air to people who feel hard done by because of the actions of government. John Wannenberg will take Douglas resident Andrea Kruger's petition, which calls for restrictions on roadside parking in Disc Zone H, to Tynwald next week. It follows concerns existing residents will be negatively impacted by development in the area, which includes the former nurses' home on Westmoreland Road. Mr. Wannenberg told Phil Gaughan he believes they do need to be protected.
First of all, it's not about new development, and particularly not about new development in brownfield sites. That she is in agreement with, I'm in agreement with. What it is about is saturating an already saturated parking area with possibly another 200 cars. That doesn't make for good communities. That doesn't make for easy life. It just creates more frustration to people who are already living here.
But the community in question is effectively a brownfield site. We hear a lot about the need to develop brownfield sites to avoid building on the beautiful Manx countryside, and we hear about green transport, using buses and trying to wean people off using the cars. Presumably, these things will be being considered because this is in relation to the development proposed by the Manx Development Corporation.
Yeah, now, Phil, in the last couple of days, I haven't seen too many people on bicycles and too many people walking because of the weather. So, as much as we want to provide these things, one has to be realistic. And again, it is not against the new development, be it conversion of existing houses into flats or new builds or HMOs. What we are trying to do here is protect the ability to park for residents of the existing dwellings who can't create parking for themselves retrospectively. The houses on Domain Road, Allen Street, Tynwald Street, etc., they are very congested insofar as parking is considered. They barely have enough space for their wheelie bins in their backyards and no front gardens whatsoever. Even if people have a front garden and double yellow lines outside, planning is not usually granted to convert the front gardens into private parking spaces. And then this particular petitioner would be happy to do that at her own expense. But it's in a conservation area and she cannot do that. So she is at the mercy of the authorities. And she doesn't go out for meetings after, I think it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, for fear of not being able to park her car when she comes back. Now, whether or not you agree with that, that's the way she feels. And that's her perception, and her perception is reality for her. And I feel that I should at least try and make things better for her.
Douglas North MHK speaking to Phil Gaughan about why he's taking a petition about parking to Tynwald later this month. And now, parking up in the sports desk is Rob Pritchard. Faster my Rob.
Faster my Dave. Well, starting tonight with motorsport, 2024 senior TT winner Davey Todd will be reunited with the Malenko by Paget's motorcycles team at this year's races. Todd will contest the Supersport and Super Twin classes with Clive Paget's squad on Honda and Patton machinery respectively. Separately, he'll contest the 1000cc classes on board FHO racing machinery. Well, the Saltburn rider says he's really excited to be back with the Batley-based outfit, adding he's hopeful they can do some good things together. Well, during 2022 and 23, Todd Todd raced solely for Malenko by Paget's Motorcycles, people will remember. In 2022, he claimed his first TT podium with a third-place finish in the Superstock race. Also that year, he finished fourth in both the Senior and Supersport 2 contests. And then 12 months later, he managed 3 top 5 finishes at TT 2023, 4th position in both the Superstock 1 and Supersport 2 races, and 5th in the Supersport 1. Elsewhere in athletics, Sarah Aston has set a new Manx record in the women's 10-kilometre road race. Contesting the Valencia 10K on Saturday, the 11th of January, Aston crossed the finish line in 32 minutes 20 seconds to finish 26th overall in the women's race. Well, that time is 15 seconds quicker than her own previous record over that distance of 32 minutes 35 seconds set at the Trafford 10K event in March 2023. Meanwhile, the Isle of Man had another competitor involved in the Valencia meeting in the form of Carolyn Mayers. The Manx Harriers athlete finished 5th in the women's over 50s class and inside the top 240 female runners overall, managing a time of 40 minutes and 55 seconds. Well, as well as setting the island's national benchmark over 10 kilometres, Aston also currently holds 2 other Manx road running records for the 10-mile and half marathon disciplines. She also boasts 3 women's track and field Isle of Man records in the 3,000 metres, 5,000 metres and 10,000 metre races. And finally, an update from Island endurance athlete Nikki Arthur's ongoing progress in the infamous Spine race in the UK. It's day 4 for competitors and Arthur is still 3rd in the women's class and shortly before 3 p.m. passed her latest checkpoint at Greenhead in Cumbria with just under 79 hours of the challenge gone at that point. Well, that means she has passed through 11 of the 14 checkpoints so far, and the gruelling event, it gives competitors 160 hours in total to complete a continuous 268-mile course. Well, Arthur is currently on course to match the achievements of her partner, Oren Smith, who successfully completed the last 2 Spine races.
Just under, about 15 seconds left. A quick update on TT star James Hillier at the Dakar.
Indeed. Well, just an update from his team, WTF. He's put in another awesome performance in their words as he continues. He's now up to P56 overall on stage 10.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob Pritchard at the Sports Desk. And that's it for Update. Compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thank you, newsreader Siobhan Fletcher. And sports editor Rob Pritchard. Hello, podcast audience listening anywhere in the world at any time, day or night. Thank you for making Update the Isle of Man's most subscribed to news podcast. If you know someone who you think would enjoy a daily bulletin of news from the Isle of Man, tell them Update's available as a podcast via Apple, Google, the Smart Speaker, Spotify or the TuneIn app. You can get all the details at the App Store or at manxradio.com. The stories you've heard on this update and much more Manx news, plus interviews and podcasts, the web's biggest source of Manx videos, are all at manxradio.com and via the free Manx Radio app. So just go online, like Manx Radio on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and subscribe to the Manx Radio YouTube channel. Thank you for listening. An update will be back tomorrow at 5.